You are tuning in to another great episode of the 1946 Culture Shift Tour. This is season 2, and I am your host, Sharon Rocky Roggio. In today's premiere episode, we're sitting down with Odette and Natalie, two incredible LGBTQ+ advocates who helped make the film 1946, The Mistranslation That Shifted Culture, available in Spanish. They'll share why this translation is such a milestone, how faith and identity collide in Spanish-speaking communities, and the personal experiences that led them to this work. So settle in, we're just getting started. Hello.
There we go.
Hi.
Okay.
Well, you all know who I am. I think Sharon Rocky Roggio, the director of 1946, The Mistranslation That Shifted Culture. Odette and Natalie, we've got on today. This is our second season of the 1946 podcast. I'm really excited to talk with both of you today. I was wondering if maybe we could just start it off while we're already recording, because I like to just kind of get into it. As I was saying, like, I know we've met at the Reformation Project once, but really all of this happened, as a lot of our connections happen, through the good old social media of just letting people know what's going on and then people reaching out and being a part of this project. And now this is kind of like that extension of the project where we're in our impact campaign and we're working to get the project accessible through language accessibility and accessible all over the world, which we're working with a distributor right now to get us on Apple TV and YouTube worldwide. It seems like we're going to still have to update the files. So there's fees associated, but we're happy to have this nuance, which is so important, which we're going to be talking about today, which we've done with all of the other language that we've crafted around this film, because we're talking about language, we're talking about translation, and we're trying to communicate with our loved ones. And so it was very important to us as the filmmakers to get the language and the translation correct. And so to that end, getting the nuance with all the different languages that we're working to get it accessible around the world is pretty exciting. And now this is the next language, the Spanish. So yeah, do you want to tell us a little bit? Who wants to go first? Who you are, tell us where you're from. Maybe Odette, why don't you start, since we have the connection and then Natalie was brought in.
Awesome. Awesome. Yes. Well, I was born here in Puerto Rico. I have lived here all my life. I work right now at the export department of a motor vehicle electrical part factory. I am currently part of a welcoming but not affirming church. But even though they are not affirming, I have to say that it's a beautiful faith community. It's where I have met Jesus. I have found freedom and purpose in life. So I didn't grow up in church, but I met Jesus just as an adult, being openly lesbian. And a little bit of my story is that when I began exploring my faith and surround myself with non-affirming Christians, I start to ask myself, well, why do Christians say that it's a sin to love a woman? I didn't understand their mindset, and I thought, where is the sin in loving a woman? So, but because the God that I knew is one to offer unconditional love and radical inclusion, that helped me to validate myself as his daughter, and that prevents anyone in church for making me doubt that truth. So it has been a journey. Learning how to love non-affirming Christians and being in their life, allowing them to be in my life, trying to understand why they think the way they do. But thanks to the fact that the church I belong to doesn't try to change that part of my identity, I have learned compassion, patience, and to understand first that a change of mind must begin with a change of heart. And also, something that I had learned with experience and time is that the only one who has the power to transform people's hearts is Jesus. So I leave that to him. And for now, I just try to do my part. I'm continuing to be present in church, loving my brothers and sisters in faith. I try to keep deepening my theological understanding. So when those hearts are ready, I can be used by God in the process of reforming their faith and allowing an affirming view of scripture regarding LGBTQ plus community. So there's a little bit of my story.
That's great. And I love the part about having grace and extending grace to people who aren't really there, being affirming and what that looks like, because we all weren't there at one point.
For sure. Yeah.
And yeah,
Yeah.
so
Yeah.
that's awesome. Okay, great. And Natalie, why don't you tell us where you are and who you
Okay,
are?
so I was born and raised in Puerto Rico, fully. I miss it every day. I moved to Florida about 4 years ago. So I met Odette. We go to the same church. I still say that that's my church when I go back to Puerto Rico. That's it. I was born and raised in Puerto Rico, and I was born and raised in the church too. So it's definitely an experience of like coming out and having this whole part of your life being looked through the church too. So I think we'll go into that a little bit on. I work as an email marketing specialist, so I'm a nerd of email. I'm a nerd. Like in the mornings, I think people open their cell phones and they will go to like social media. I will go to my email. That's the first thing I do. I'm a geek on that, but I love it. Yeah, so I'll do like data analysis, segmentation, anything that goes into email coding emails. I'm your person.
That's a pretty awesome. Well, I'm sure, did you both hear of 1946 through social media or maybe at the conference or a little bit of both?
I did in social media. I think it started
Yeah,
popping up
okay.
a couple of months before it was I think it was post production. You were talking about like we're getting close there, we're getting close there. It was that times like, hey, what's this? What's going on in here?
Very cool.
Yes, in my case, I first saw the Cathy Baldog's videos, viral videos, that what way before the film was starting to be filmed. And then when I saw that, I thought, okay, everyone needs to know this. And when I saw that you guys begin with the production and all that, I was really excited.
Yeah, no, we're the same in that regard because when I first was learning about the 1946 mistranslation, the I went to a class on homosexuality in the Bible, learned of Malachi Arsenicoitai, but that's all that we really kind of talked about. And then someone in that class, my friend Tracy, told me about Cathy Baldock, and I went home and binged watched Cathy Baldock, and I'm like, oh my gosh, everybody needs to know about this. And then the footage in the film with me and my dad, where my dad asks Cathy, can you show one example in the Bible? That was the first day that we started filming. And so she just happened to be in town the same weekend my parents were in town, and so that was when I learned about the 1946 mistranslation because nothing had been on the internet at that point about her discovery. Like she and Ed, so this was 2018 we filmed that, and she and Ed were so she was talking about it in 2016 when she met Ed. Then Ed started buying all those Bibles. It might have been a little bit before 2016, because I think it was then 2017 they went to Yale. And then 9 months later, the summer of 2018 is when they had just found David, which was right before we had started filming,
That is my
So
favorite part.
Wow.
it's
Wow.
great, right? And so they just talked about it maybe at one other event prior to this event that we filmed at the United Methodist Church in Hollywood, which is a very iconic church, about not only the story of finding this mistranslation through the archives, but then finding David. So I'm filming, you can imagine, and it's in the movie, and I'm like, oh my gosh, this is what the documentary is about. Because prior to that, I was trying to find a story to tell about affirming theology to communicate with my non-affirming parents, which is kind of what this is about, with now extending it out to Spanish speaking people. So you can have something, a tool to use with, your parents. And all I knew was Kathy Bullock's work, which is incredible. But then now this extension with her finding of 1946, bringing Ed in, the archives, and David, I was like, wow,
This
this
is
is a
so
story.
interesting because I
This
thought it
isn't-
was the other way around, that you had chosen to do this and you had already that set up, but you're finding this at the same time that it's like
Live,
happening, everything.
happening.
That I didn't know. That is
Right.
so cool.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so, prior to, I just was like, I'm going to make a documentary about affirming theology. Had no idea what that looked like.
Okay.
Learned of, went to homosexuality in the Bible class, learned of Kathy Bullock, and then, went to this conference that she was doing. And so, yeah, it kind of just was unfolding. And since I'm a filmmaker and I'm like, I said I was going to make a documentary, well, I'm like, well, let's just film this event with my parents there. We can't miss it, And my dad didn't disappoint, and Kathy and Ed didn't disappoint. Spoiler alert for anybody who hasn't seen the film.
That is like, and I think I wrote to you even before we met, because I wrote to you as soon as I finished the documentary for the first time. I wrote to you, it's like, you showing your relationship with your father. My parents are pastors. Like, I grew up, they're pastors, and we've talked just like twice about my sexuality, and it's like, we don't talk about Bruno kind of situation that we do with our family.
Oh, I know that.
So the fact that you're showing this on this movie is like, I don't think people understand how raw, how vulnerable you're being on that, and kind of like showing some things that we won't have, even though, because as your father says, like, hey, I'm not changing. I know my parents are not changing. So it's
Right.
like, how do we continue life with this? Because we were shown growing up in church and growing up as a pastor kid that family, it's so important. But there is this thing that will not allow to fulfill that promise of, family is the most important thing, and family is so important to God. So we're just taking that out of the equation. It hurts.
Yeah.
It
Yeah.
really hurts not having your family present there. So you showing that, I think that was, I don't know if that was the hardest part for you, but showing of how we want to talk about our lives to our family, knowing that we are gay and we're Christian and we're still honoring God in that. I don't think people understand how hard that is of not having that, to talking to your family about your journey as a Christian and as being part of the LGBT community, even in this like days with the politics going on.
Yeah, I mean, but so then with this 1946 mistranslation and having the letters, it afforded within those conversations of these boundaries, right? This wasn't my feelings, my opinion, or an interpretation. This was a tangible mistake that we could trace that hopefully then we can take back and have a conversation with our loved ones. So I always say to that end, as far as, yes, it's very hard to not have your family in your life, and our stories are similar, and we wanted to show a way that this plays out in our real reality. But for me, and it sounds like with your parents as well too, they're coming from a real belief where they believe that, and my parents used to really believe that homosexuals would not inherit the kingdom of God. Now they might believe that you can be born that way, but you can't act on it. So they're moving, but they were really just concerned for my eternal soul. And they're not berating me about it. They're not constantly telling me how much of a sin. It's like you said, it's the Bruno thing. So we don't talk about it. And so how do you do relationship then? And if you're not showing up, then you can't be an example. But then to that end, I always say, if you're in a relationship where your parents are being negative and they're constantly saying hurtful things, whether they're being emotionally, spiritually, verbally, or physically, obviously abusive, all of those things you should walk away from. And so to this is just about conversation and how do we stand it. But it doesn't make it any easier, and there's only so much you can talk about the weather. So
I know about that one. We're just sending, we will just send reels through social media. That's all what we'll do, and we won't talk about it, but we're fine.
Yeah, but hopefully your parents watch the film and other parents as well. And so one good helpful way is, instead of, I'm sure it's a surprise or people won't even believe the 1946 thing. But instead of going at it, we're like, see, the Bible was wrong. Watch this movie, because that's not our tone at all, even in the film. It would be more like, wow, this documentary is claiming this. I found that really hard to believe. But I'm really interested in it. That sounds so interesting. Would you watch it? I want to watch it. Would you watch this with me? And kind of do it in a way where you're exploring the option with your loved one. I don't know. Anyway, but no, that's really cool. So I guess we kind of talked about what moved you personally and spiritually to get involved with the film, but did you have any kind of insight a little bit more as far as like anything that stands out about your personal walk or your personal relationships with your families that would be like, hey, how can I help get this material to people that need it in my community?
Odette, do you want?
Well, I can say a little bit about that. What first moved me to try to do something and try to help in any way that I can, especially trying to make the film accessible to Spanish-speaking audiences, is because the vast majority of the resources on the topic of inclusion are in English. So I think that it's always have been in my heart that desire to find a way to make this information accessible to more people, because when you search in Spanish, there are so little information. So I think that, well, people that speak only Spanish have a disadvantage in this, you know, and this topic is almost non-existent in our culture. So we need more Spanish voices to help spread a theological coherent message that supports our full inclusion within the church. And I really think that 1946 can be a good start for those families, as you are saying right now. It's a big conversation start. So also because I always wanted to contribute in some way to the beautiful work that is doing 1946, and I want to help more people to find freedom found when the freedom that I found when I first saw the documentary and learned about this information.
Yeah. For me, I think, and I think Odette and I, we have talked about this, because of the fact that Odette didn't grow up in the church, and sometimes she says like, "Oh, I wish I would have, because I would know other things," and I've always told her like, "No, I think this is the best way that God intended this," because Odette has such a heart for people to know Jesus. Everybody needs an Odette in their life to talk about Jesus, because it's like this thirst of like, no, just everybody needs to learn about this and everybody needs to know. And for me, and I hope it doesn't sound in a bad way, but for me has been more the part of, we have grown up with such bad theology in this subject, in this matter, that we need people to be able to open their heart of knowing that the same way we talk on how God renews your mind and renews your heart and your soul, he can also do it on this subject that probably doesn't affect you, but it will affect how you treat others coming into the church, coming into the community. For me, it was more the part of like, I think people need to relearn the aspect of the Bible that sometimes we forget. That even though we have a relationship personally with Jesus, we need to know Bible and we need to educate ourselves. That's how we become better Christians, and that's how our walk with Jesus would be the best testimony once we dive in on what kind of information we have. And for the LGBT plus community, this is important, and not just to tell like, oh, this is wrong. No, because it's not that. It's a part of like, hey, we are here, we exist, and we think that our fruit, our heart needs to be known, not for pride, for anything bad, just to let us know like, hey, we can be here because God made us and God called us, and it doesn't matter if you're straight or gay. It's the fact that we were given the word of God and we have the ability to study. Let's study together. So I guess it's that push of wanting to people to know that we can question the Bible and that we can study. Like, we have the Bible, we can go ahead and study it. It's the part of leaving a challenge to every Christian that we can do this.
Yeah, they're definitely not gatekeepers, and so that
Yes, for
resonates
sure.
super well. Okay, so how did this all come about? How did we, and honestly, I've been trying to get the Spanish subtitles done for a long time, and you would think that that would have been the first language that we had done. And so it just so happened to be, I mean, with me, making this movie, there's constantly so many hats and so many things going on. And then there was the festival season, then there's the distribution season when we were like in theaters and things like that. And now this impact and everything, it's like, it seems like the work just is getting
Yeah.
more,
You're just busy
even
the
in
whole time.
distribution. Yeah, and so we were first contacted by some friends in the Netherlands who helped us do the Dutch subtitles, and we were contacted by a group called Safer Church in France that helped us do the French subtitles, and then we were contacted, like I said earlier, our friends in Singapore, and we got Chinese and Thai, and we were able to be all over Asia. Now we're working with someone who's a mother with Free Mom Hugs and PFLAG. Her name is Eunice, helping us get the Korean subtitles done. And then Ed Oxford has a friend, Ed speaks Japanese and studied Japanese, was a missionary in Japan for many years. It's part of his story that he
That doesn't
talks about.
surprise
And
me
so
at all
has,
from it.
yep, totally. Many connections there. And so the Japanese subtitles are almost done, but now we're finally getting the Spanish subtitles. I can't believe it. I'm so excited. So Odette, you slipped into my DMs, which always seems to happen with these connections that I make, which is amazing. And I love it. The social media thing works. And it's so cool to meet people all over the world. And now here you are in Puerto Rico. So tell us a little bit about that conversation and then how we got Natalie involved.
Yes, of course. It's an awesome story. It started with the Puerto Rico Queer Film Festival. We have that a film festival here. It has been showing up like for 13 years. But for the last 2 years, I've been trying to get 1946 in the festival, and last year, I wrote to Rocky to tell her like I think that it would be a good idea to propose that the film is one of the films that is going to be shown in the festival, and that was when Rocky shared with me the idea to put the Spanish captions because she wanted to make the film more accessible to the Hispanic community. And I thought that that was really awesome. So, but the truth is that I had no idea how to add captions to a film, I had translated YouTube videos, articles from English to Spanish, but the work of adding captions, I have never done that. So when Rocky sent me the file, I saw like the magnitude of the work, the level of detail and experience that it required to do that. And I thought, you know, how am I going to do this? But I don't know if you know this, but it's not knowing how to do things, it's knowing who knows how to do them. So that was when I thought about Natalie. Yes, yes. Honestly, I didn't know if she have ever done anything like this before. But she's the kind of friend that you can always trust in. She's always willing to help. And if she doesn't know something, she'll find a way. So I was certain of her level of dedication to everything she set out to do, her level of commitment, and that she was one of those peoples with the heart and the desire to work on and from for the kingdom. So I had no hesitation to approach her and ask her if she knew how to work with integrating the subtitles, the Spanish subtitles to a film. And the first time I thought that maybe she could teach me how. My intention was to learn how to do it. But the best thing was that she told me, like, I think that I can do this. I was incredibly excited. And from that time on, I knew that the project will be in the best hands. So I reached out to her, and there you go.
Amazing. Well, it doesn't sound like you had any technical experience with this. And I'm going to tell you the truth, like, I don't either. And I love how you said, Odette, like, the best skill is to know what you can't do and what you can do, and then hire the people to do or ask for help for the people who can do it. You know, that's been this whole movie for me. And even learning to work with captions. So there's SRT files, there's VTT files, there's the XX, I don't
It's a
know. There's
bunch
an
of
X
languages.
something one, you know, and this group wants this one. This one doesn't work on this platform, and I'm like, you got to be kidding me, you know, like, and so to be fair, I don't know how to do it. I have been, everybody who's been helping has been, you know, there's only so much. And when I don't know how to do it, I do YouTube University and I learn. I haven't really had to learn this because I've learned a little bit about it, but as far as what you've done, Natalie, like taking one file and translating it, that's incredible. Can you walk us through kind of what that looks like, and how did you, first of all, were you intimidated? And,
Yes.
or,
Yes. So we have a word in Puerto Rico, we say presentar, when you're kind of like a little bit nosy. And I love that about Odette. Odette will get into anything. I'll text Odette in the morning, like, hey Odette, how are you? How are you doing? And she goes like, well, she's like, oh, I'm volunteering. And suddenly she's doing like, what are you doing? But this is the part of like, God puts a heart on her. She has a heart that she will go anywhere. If she has to go horseback riding to talk about, you will see her talking about Jesus on a horse. She would do it. And I think when she came up to me with that, I was like, I have to do it because it's Odette. I cannot say no to Odette. And the thing is, like, um, I don't think I am that dumb. I think I'm a pretty smart person. But I told, like, yeah, sure, send it. When I opened that file, so for my job, I code emails. Like, I'll do HTML, CSS, and I work from Monday through Friday, and let's say probably 3 to 4 days I'll work in coding, just like coding emails, and probably a little bit of JavaScript, a little bit of JSON, but mostly HTML. So I'm going like, this can't be this complicated. Rocky, my files go from probably, let's say, 750 to 1500 lines of coding. And that is something, okay, I'm good here. I have like a vertical monitor here, which helps me a lot. When I opened that file that had over 5,000 lines, I looked at it. and mind you, the idea of coding, and I don't mean to sound like, oh, I'm explaining everything to you, but coding, it's basically a language. So a VTT file is a different language from HTML is a different language. You just have to learn what you're reading. And I opened it, and I remember the first time I said, like, I need coffee. So I stood up, I get some coffee, and I sat down again, and I'm like, you're not this dumb. You're not smarter than I am. So here I start like going for it a little bit and understanding, like, okay, this is a timestamp. This is where it's going to be showing. This is the text. This is this. We got this. My idea was like, let's first watch the documentary again and get the tone set of what I'm going to do, and let's do this. Once I'm done watching it, I'm like, okay, the words are there. You just have to translate it. You know English. Spanish is your first language, but you were born in a bilingual home. You know this. And the first words of the documentary are, so I have a couple of quiz questions. And I stopped. I'm like, how do I translate so in Spanish? Because one of the things that happens is like, yes, I'm Puerto Rican, but not only Puerto Ricans are going to watch the documentary. People from Mexico, Venezuela, Chile, Colombia, like Cuba, and we don't speak the same Spanish. So it's like, how do I translate the word so that everybody understands it? So I had even to text some friends like, hey, how would you translate the word so? And we had this whole conversation of like, well, you could say bueno or pues or sí. And then it's like, but I need everybody to understand it. So there were some things that go in the process, even because Spanish tends to be a little bit longer on words when you want to specify something, and in English is a little bit more basic, but you don't want that whole text to be long when you just say, I don't know, 5 words, and here I'm adding like 7, 8 words, and you also want it to be in a general way that everybody can understand it, but at the same time you need to have the heart of what is being said there. So that was a lot of challenges on keeping the tone of it, of being very deep, but at the same time general, so that a person from Puerto Rico and a person from Argentina can understand it. So it's like, this is a very interesting challenge for it. And it kind of like helps your brain to keep working, keep that little hamster running around the that carousel over there. It helps a lot.
That's so interesting. Just if the technical part is interesting within itself, and I understand because I've worked within that file now. So yes, there's time code, which is the timestamp of the movie, and then there's another code that tells you the position
yeah.
of the text, which is what you were saying. So either it's mostly in the middle, kind of center frame, but sometimes we bump
Yeah,
it up
yeah.
when we have a graphic on the bottom or something, and we don't want, so. Yes, it's not just as simple as just translating the language, but then within translating the language itself, that's a similar thing, yeah, that we heard from our other friends, right? How do you get the nuance? But then for you, the bigger question, the Spanish speaking nations, there's so many different,
And
What were some other examples maybe that was another like, oh, kind of a stuck moment?
when we, and for this, I didn't even want to bother because I knew you were so busy. I'm like, I can do this. But when we got into the Bible names of it, so like a quick history lesson, for English, I know people, I don't know, going to church before, I don't know, the 80s, you used to use the King James version. So for us, the equivalent of it, but it's called Reina Valera. I think it was published in 1606, 1602, like a couple of years before King James. So our Spanish version, like the equivalent of it is that. So we don't use King James version. So it's like, okay, how I translate King James, because James in Spanish is Santiago. And it's like, I'm not going to put Rey Santiago, versión Rey Santiago. I'm going to put like the name because people are going to understand it. But when we got into the deep part of translating the names of the Bible, it's like, wait, this thing, because for us, I think the first time that the word homosexual in Spanish was in a Bible, I think was in the 70s. And for Reina Valera, it was in 1991, the first time. And here I'm thinking like, why? Like they already fixed this mistranslation. Why do we are going with this on this version? So having the names of the Bibles for me was very important because I know, and this is probably me overstepping a little bit, but I know people would want to see this movie to say like, oh no, they have it wrong. No, they have it wrong. So
Right.
we need this part of the theology to be correct, to know like, okay, we probably didn't have the Living Translation. I think we got it here on the 80s. I think it was 79. We had the first time we had it in Spanish. And those were the first versions that were being translated in Spanish from English and not having the original like Reina Valera. So we weren't using English translations. Now we are using them, like because now we can use the Living Translation. We can use the New International Version. And I think, and this is me probably just thinking, not doing a proper research like Ed and Kathy, but I think that now the new versions of Reina Valera are coming from English versions, or not necessarily from an original, because it's more accessible, it's easier, I think so. So having the names of it for me was very important because again, it's a mistranslation documentary, and mistranslating in Spanish would be such like a, you did that. Um,
Right. So you put the name of what the equivalent Bible would be, but it wasn't like a literal translation of what the name of the Bible in English was, it sounds
if
like.
we have it in Spanish, for example, we don't use King James version. I don't think we use it regularly unless you're like in a bilingual church and you use both. It's not normal, but
Yeah.
but for example, for the Living Translation, New International Version, and the America's Bible, we have a different name that is not because I think the English version of the America Bible is based America as United States, and for us America is like the whole continent. So it tends
Right.
to have a different perspective, but if it does exist, the equivalent of it, it's translated as it is. For example, King James versions and other versions that probably are talked about in the documentary that we don't have in Spanish, they have that same name. Because if you want a person that wants to look for more information, I want you to go and look for that specific version that we don't have in Spanish. So I think it's just trying to make it for the viewer an easy experience of like, wait, I want to get more information about this, so I'll just go straight to this rather than just having a literal translation that doesn't make sense. And
Right.
even mentioning that we have so many versions of the Bible. That is important. And I think also clover passages, that word in Spanish,
Yeah.
oh, Latinos, we need a conference to talk about that word. Because so I talked with this to Odette about this because we don't have a specific word for clobber. Clobber is like, oh, I'm hitting you, but we're using such a dramatic word, and I'm sorry that I'm not making fun of it, but I'm just remembering about it, and I'm like, oh God, we need a new word for this because it's very dramatic. It's called pasajes garrotes, and it sounds very dramatic. But at the same time, I understand how hard needs to sound on the fact that we are being hit with those passages every time, and it's not a word that we use every day. We don't use garrotes, but I think, and I wrote to this about some of our friends that are not from the LGBTQ plus community, but they are Christians. And I asked them like, hey, how would you translate clover passages? And this was a whole conversation of, well, maybe you can say this, maybe you can say that. And I'm like, no, it's just that this is known for us in the community. And I think we need to, even though it's not my favorite word, I think we need to spread that out that this exists and this is called pasajes garrotes. Um,
And what does that translate to?
Garrotes are like the bars from a jail.
Okay.
That you maybe if you go in deepen into like translating it, like you could probably take it out and just hit someone or very dramatic of it. I even
You don't want to be hit with one of those, basically, and people know that. Yeah.
I even had to and I
Yeah.
even had to talk to I met this person at the centerpiece conference, and we were talking that he was translating some books, and I talked to him like, hey, how do you approach this? And he goes like, oh, I know, but people got together and they thought pasajes garrotes was the best word to represent this. And I'm like, okay, don't you use another word? And he says like, well, sometimes I'll use some other words, but I'll expand on it on the book. And I'm like, I don't have a book to expand. I just have subtitles. So we have to go with what we have to make sense that clover passages are pasajes garrotes. And I was thinking also like it's good for if you're not part from the community or you don't know it's called, because even me, when I'm talking to someone in Spanish about this, I'll go, sí, esto, lo otro, y tenemos clover passages que significan, and then I'll use the English word for it. I don't use pasajes garrotes. So that's also kind of like a little bit of complication on how we communicate what the community goes through when we talk about those Bible verses. I think it's just a matter of perspective of how much have you heard those words and how they resonate on you with that translation.
Well, what was the final outcome then as for the subtitles? Was it clobber passages or
Pasajes
the
garrotes. Yeah,
Spanish? Yeah. Okay.
because
Yeah.
even though I'm joking about like we need to have a conference and talk about this word trying to change it, I still think that it is important that we all speak the same language of knowing that probably personally I don't love the word garrotes, but we need to know what we're talking about because there may come a time we are bilingual and we can get it, but what happens where people are not bilingual? We cannot have different
Right.
terms for everything because when we try to communicate about it, we all need to know and we all need to have the same knowledge that these are pasajes garrotes and these are the passages that they use for the LGBTQ community, and we need to know what they are and where we stand as the Latino community. So I joke about this and I make fun because every time I say it, I think like I'm in a telenovela and I'll say like pasajes garrotes and I'm writing it in the subtitles and I'm here pasajes garrotes. But
Yeah.
I think even though we don't use them as much as we probably do, as we say clever passages, again, I grew up in a bilingual community. I haven't had come yet to a person that tells me that they're part of the community and Christian and not speak English. Because all the encounters that we have been on the centerpiece conference and someone that is at least a little bit can defend or they can understand English a little bit rather than just like, oh no, I don't speak any English, so I need to have this all in Spanish.
Yeah, no, and then instead of somebody passing over that moment because they don't understand what really is being said, getting that severity of
Yeah.
the messaging behind these passages, I think, yeah, that's really important. I love that. That's great. What year were you at Centerpiece?
This year, it's just
So
we saw each other. It's
was
just
I
that
there?
we
Yeah.
never kind of like crossed and path. One time I went to the
I
table and it's
see.
like, no, she's not here. I'm like, oh man. I waited for a couple. I was like,
I wish we had a chance to
yeah.
meet.
But yeah, I think we saw each other a couple of times. I was helping there with the translation with Interprify. Just being
Oh, yeah.
there
Wonderful.
to help because it was the first time that it was being translated in live, so that we can have. I think bringing in the Latino community has been something that is just starting. Odette, do you remember
Yeah.
how many people were there? Like less than 20 people from the Latino community?
Well, yeah, between 10 and 15.
Yeah, there weren't a lot,
Yeah.
but there's like, oh my God, we're here. The Latinos are here. We need to do something. And
Yes, it was awesome.
yeah,
That's great. Yeah, no, I was hiding behind my social media camera and running around doing videos. But yeah, next time let's definitely say hi. We'll have to do lunch. And so for anybody who's not familiar, who's listening, the Centerpiece Conference is really Centerpiece organization that was started by Sally Gary, who is married to Karen Keene. They're both authors, and Karen Keene is a theologian. And Centerpiece is an organization that would be kind of a mirrored organization of the Reformation Project, which was started by Matthew Vines. And every other year they switch years where they hold their conferences. So this year will be the Reformation Project, I believe, in Atlanta.
October, yeah, in
Do
Georgia,
I have
yeah.
that right? In October in Georgia. Great. And then last year, Centerpiece, I think Centerpiece is always in Dallas, pretty much at a Baptist church. And LGBTQIA plus and ally Christians get together and talk about affirming theology and a time to worship and community and things like that. So very cool. Next time, definitely say hi. That would be amazing. Okay, Odette, I'd love to know. I know we've talked about some of the importance of translations and getting things right and that nuance and why it's important. Did you get a chance to watch the documentary with the subtitles? And what was your
Yes.
experience? Great. And what did you feel? Were all those nuances hit? And then what was that feeling? And then talk to us about the importance of how important it is for you, for your community to get it. You're right.
Yes, yes. As Natalie is saying, it was very important that no matter the country you are from, everyone reading the Spanish subtitles will have a translation that was faithful to the original content, but also that they could understand what was being said and also feel represented, you know? And I felt really, really happy when I saw the Spanish captions. It was like the film was talking directly to me. You know, it was like a different feeling. It's very normal to watch content like films and documentary in another language with Spanish subtitles, you know, but it feels different when you know the process behind it and the work that someone put in that, knowing that the people that I care about are behind making this a reality, that gives the project a special meaning, you know. So I'm very happy that people who previously wouldn't be able to access this information, um, now they will be able to know the misconceptions about the translation, and that barrier, that language barrier, will not be there right now. So I think that that was the best thing for me, you know, seeing them and being able to like see my language there and know that most people will have the opportunity to learn about this.
That's so cool. Natalie, what was your experience first
For
seeing it?
me, can I give, yeah, I think I can give spoilers of
Yeah.
the documentary, right? So there are two things there that always like, and I watched while doing this, I think I watched it probably more than 20 times because I was like going back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. When you start reading the letter that your father gives you, there's a part where you say like, I know you have a caring heart in you, and translating that part for me was so important because I saw myself like with my parents of like, they know I love God on this part, so I need to have that. And when I was reading it, trying to take away the part that you did this, you wrote this, you put this here, um I remember I took like a 2 day break of not watching anything and just coming back to it and just reading it, knowing that even reading it touches my heart of knowing like I know that people are going through this, and if you're someone that doesn't speak English and reads this, they're gonna know what we're talking about. And the other part, when I the first time that I saw it like a couple of years ago, I was here at home and I was watching it for the first time, and the scene where Kathy is like, yeah, it was 9 a.m. and I pick up my phone and I go like, hello, David. And she goes, hello, David. When I realized that he was there, I was like washing my dishes. My living room is connected with my kitchen and everything. I was like, he's there. He's there. So the part of reading this part in Spanish, like, because I even here I'm writing it and I'll speak it out loud. I would say, "Hola, David, David, David," but here I am reading it, and for some reason it gave like "Hola, David," and I'm like, "This is it's still it still gets that part of like the whole journey being recorded and everything being there, and now having this second perspective now in another language. I don't know if it happens to you on your bilingual brain, but some things are a little bit different when you read it or experience it or you talk it in a different language when you talk it or experience it in your first language. So when you're I've been experiencing I've been experiencing this in English the whole time, and suddenly I'm experiencing in Spanish and I'm like, oh, come on. So it's that part that I know, like I'm so sure that when people watch this, that feeling is there because I'm reading it, I'm feeling it, and knowing, oh my God, this whole journey that sometimes it's hard of growing up in the church, uh, coming out, and suddenly, specifically, not being able to share this with your family specifically, it's touches your heart of knowing like, okay, I am not alone on this journey, and someone else took the trouble, took the responsibility, like you did, Rocky, of showing us, like, oh my God, this happened in our timeline, and we're just living through it, and we may be part of a change in history with the church. So that is, I think that is huge. That is huge.
Yeah, that's awesome. I love it. I'm so excited. I can't wait to share all of this with everyone and actually make an announcement that that they're available, which will happen. You know, I can get them up on Eventive pretty soon, and then the Apple thing. I'm not sure when that announcement is. I still don't know. um, but yeah, but okay. So really quickly, I'm going to switch to camera language in that scene where we introduced Reverend David for the first time. So spoiler alert again, I'm giving myself away here, but not being like the technical person and more of the producer. So that was the second thing that we ever filmed. That those scenes where David comes out essentially for the first time as a gay man in public after Kathy and Ed found him. That was at the Chicago Queer Christian Fellowship Conference. It was January 2019. So only a couple months after we filmed that first segment with Kathy and Ed and my dad in Hollywood. And you can tell if you really look at the footage, it's not as good as some of the other footage because I shot that footage. And so that trip, I had some volunteers come with me because we had no money and I was paying for everything, you know, and I'm like, well, I got to get to Chicago. And like you said, everything's in real time, you know, and I'm like, I have to film this, you know. And so I started buying camera gear and then I had to figure out how to use that camera gear. And that's why we have a lot of GoPro kind of shots. And so we introduced the film at the beginning with me coming into the GoPro to kind of introduce the camera language to the audience so it doesn't seem so jarring when it comes in later. Because I was like, what if the audio doesn't work or a camera drops? At least I have it, or at least, you know, like, because those first couple moments of filming, we're trying to, you know, build a trailer, start getting the story, get the story while it's happening in real time, but also help put the pieces together to help find people to help us
And
make this
create a
movie.
timeline
You know?
when everything's happening at the same time. And okay.
So the night before, where I have like 3 volunteers that came with me, we're all shoved in one hotel room because I paid for the flights, and I'm like, we're sharing a hotel room. It was awful, but awesome at the same time.
It's part of the
And Googling
experience.
how to figure out. Yeah. And so, and I have one of the cameras on a jib and it's like going like this all around the room. And, you know, I'm so embarrassed, but we got through it and we got what we needed. And we did get those little moments. That's why if you go back to now, you've watched the movie 20 times. And for the audience who hasn't, maybe, but I've definitely watched it more than that. There's a little GoPro on the stage that has this weird angle looking up at David. Yeah, that's just because it was me with trying to figure it out with 3 volunteers. Thank you to those wonderful humans that volunteered and helped me get through those first
it
stages.
works on the part, and now I'm trying to remember those scenes, because then at the end, you show this such a perfect color take, and everybody's sitting down, and here is when David is talking about now how he sees his calling. And this was another part of the translation that I'm like, I have to get this right, because this is the heart of a pastor talking, and this is a gay pastor talking, so we need to get this right. I think you also get, and I love movies, Rocky. I love movies. So even in here, you see the development of going from those takes to something so huge. That is what at the end 1946 is doing. So it makes a lot of sense.
Thank
with
you.
the GoPro too. It does make sense.
Well, and then the drone shot at the end.
I love that one. Yes.
Which makes us, you know, it's like we're just this small little dot on the map of this whole existence, you know, and we all have these amazing stories. I don't know, it can mean a lot of different things, but anyway, we'll get back to the language and not the geeky camera language. But yeah, it's all fun and it all works together and being able to tell the story, you know, and so. Okay, so what do you think for a Spanish-speaking audience? This is a question for both of you. Odette, maybe if you want to go first. When they first see this movie in Spanish subtitles, do you have any expectations, hopes? Do you think you know what the reaction's going to be? Maybe from different audiences. You'll get a different reaction.
Well, yes. Well, it's just like other parts of the world, our Hispanic Christians and brothers and sisters from the LGBTQ plus community had to leave their churches and distance themselves from their faith, live in solitude and rejection, because their faith community has, you know, in some way rejected them and their families also. So I really believe that the information presented in the documentary can help those who speak Spanish to reevaluate their misconceptions regarding Bible translations, and that it can provide the tools that will help them to return to be a part of the body of Christ. You know, for me, that is the main purpose in all this. You know, and that they return with the same rights and responsibilities as any other Christians. You know, so that's what I think that can be the impact with this kind of work.
I love it. All right, Natalie, same question.
So for the non-affirming, I think it will create this. It could create this because first of all, I think we as the Latino community, and you know what, I'm not gonna generalize. I'm gonna use Puerto Rico because it's where I was born. I think we are so late into this conversation because it has always been no, that's a sin. No, that's an abomination. No, and coming in, I think we're so late to this conversation that showing this even to non-affirming would be like, huh, we still don't agree, but this exists. And I think it will spark this thing of like, let me go into the Bible again and look at and check what's going on. And even though maybe some people won't ever change, I think, for example, I love my parents, but I don't think they will ever change. And this is a lot of people like, oh, we'll give them some time. I was like, I know. And this is a prayer that will always be in my heart. But even for them, it could probably spark this conversation to go back and look at it and maybe think, just to spark this curiosity of looking for it. And for affirming, and even for people that don't know Jesus and they don't have a relationship with him yet, could be this part of like something being right in their heart of, you know, because at some point I was doubting, like, wait, am I really, it's okay to be gay at the beginning? Because I grew up in the church and they taught me that it was so wrong. Is it? And suddenly is this feeling, and this happened with me with Karen Keene's book, that suddenly you get this in your heart and you go like, oh no, I'm not in the wrong. I'm okay. So for me, for people that don't speak English and they're reading these works and watching everything, it's for them to go like, oh, it's okay. It's okay. Because, for example, for me, it was very important to have that Bible truth in my heart of knowing like, no, but the Bible says this. And suddenly you find this documentary and suddenly you find all these books that tells you like, no, this is what happened. It was a mistake. It was a mistranslation. So you are not wrong. What you feel in your heart, it's okay. And you're not alone. So I would expect that from people watching this movie for the first time. Like, I'm watching it from the 25th time. I'll still cry sometimes. So, but for them on the first time, it would be that part of knowing like, oh, I'm not in the wrong. I'm okay. God loves me and he made me. And like, there's a lot of people having this conversation. So it's, and also like in general to spark that conversation. I think it's Ed saying, we don't want to like impose this. We just want people to have this information and pray on it. Like, yeah, go closer to Jesus to have this information. Just go and check it by yourself because you already have all the resources for you.
That's great. That's definitely the biggest takeaway for me in making the film as the director of the movie. At the very least, even if you agree with us or not, you can take a step back from whatever reality it is that you come from and either, okay, we want to go learn a little bit more, maybe wants you to question more, and then the other side, oh, I'm not a sin, you know?
For sure. Yeah.
So I love that. I love that. I have one last question, but honestly, thank you so much for volunteering your time. I know it was a lot of time, and as we learned on this episode, a lot of
I loved it.
Oh, sugar plums. Yeah. We can curse, but I'm going to keep it PG out there for the kids. But no, but then also just, having a heart for wanting to get the movie out to the community, and then all the time that you took, and then the time to share the story here, which I love this episode so much. I think it's going to be super helpful. And the behind the scenes thing is so fun. And that's kind of the last question. Like, is there anything else that you want to share with the audience about your behind the scenes experience of working on this project, of doing this piece? Or do you have any behind the scenes questions for me, maybe that you can answer yours, and then if you want to ask me any while you have me here, as far as like making the movie, or a dire question. All the questions I get all the time on the road are with me and my dad, which of course makes sense. But anyway, any behind the scenes that you want to end with? Odette, you want to go first?
Well, just to say, well, this message is especially directly for our Hispanic LGBTQ plus community. Just please watch the documentary. The church wants you and needs you too, and that Jesus is with open arms. I want to repeat it in Spanish, just that is very clear. Este mensaje es especialmente dirigido a las personas hispanas de la comunidad LGBTQ+. Vean el documental. La iglesia los necesita a ustedes también, y Jesús los quiere recibir con brazos abiertos.
That's so good.
Beautiful.
Yeah. Yes, I do have a question. Did your father finish the book? I remember going like at night, and I'm like, wait. And I would hear on Amazon, and I saw one of his books. And I'm like, wait, did he finish? Like, where is this going? Because I would like to read it. Like, I like to read.
Oh, you saw his book on Amazon. He'll be so happy to hear that. He has written another book, a memoir, and it's basically experiences of him as a pastor walking his walk, and some things that he has done along the way, and the people he's met, and some of the reasons on why he is who he is, some of his experiences growing up. He has since not been able to finish the other book. He's been quite ill, so he's been in and out of the hospital for the last couple of years. I'm sure he's still working on it, because every time he gets his strength back, he continues to work, and he gets back up on the pulpit. And he's what I like to call the lovable antagonist, and he is such a lovely man and really has a heart for people, and he means well. We just obviously have different viewpoints, so I'm sure he wants to finish the book so he can get that viewpoint out, but we know where you stand, Dad. But also he grows and changes every day, as we all do, and that's all we can ask for in this journey, is how are we doing relationship? How are we able to let each other be an influence, and then be open to potentially changing our minds?
Yeah.
So he recently had can women actually lead churches? I'm not sure about that. I've been thinking about that a lot recently, and I'm like, who are you? So
Right, because his stance was that he couldn't, that women couldn't, and now
Yeah,
he thinks they can. Or
exactly.
he's going back.
he's met women pastors now, and he can't say that they're not filled with the Spirit, and so he's thinking on that position.
Oh, okay. So that is very interesting. That's good. I think
Yeah.
It's amazing,
I
right?
think God has a funny
Yeah,
way.
that's a start.
I think God has a funny way to, make us do relationship, and make us do like family, and make us do community. So for me, I guess on the part of, behind the scenes, was that part of me sitting for the first time and just looking at this file, like 5,000 lines file, and I'm like, yes, I can. And I remember one of my friend asked me when I'm sending, hey, I think I'm going to do this, and I'm going to talk up, like, put it this way. And her first, when I sent like a video of like, hey, this is what I'm doing, she was like, did you hit the save button for any chance? And here I'm laughing, but at the same time, it's like, wait, let me just do it just in case. Because there was this one time that the computer didn't want to work, and I'm like, oh no, please don't do this. But the cool thing about Visual Studio Code is that it's such an offline program. Like you can, like right now, if I go to the last uh, file that I send you, I can go like undo, 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 and get to the original. It won't change that much, but is this part of feeling so responsible for something and like listening to my own conversations sometimes, like, don't mess it up because this is a mistranslation documentary. You cannot mistranslate anything. So what is that saying about you? It's a part of sitting down and there and I gotta be honest, like I had a moment with God on saying like, where are like where are we going as a church and as a community? What is going to happen after this? And not only the movie, I think that the whole movement of having the LGBT at present and very visible at the church. And it was because for me right now, I'm not going to any church right now, and it's something. And I talked to Odette a lot about this. Like, I know God is calling, and I know God wants to do something, but I'm just kind of like running away for a little bit. I know He's gonna catch up to me, but at the same time, is knowing that this probably is the beginning or the continuance for something that is going to be bigger than everybody, in a way that probably 50 years ago or maybe 50 years forward we didn't thought about it. And like probably again, the two parts that I said at the beginning that they were my favorites and I will always cry, it's you showing your relationship with your father. And when David comes up like, hi David, I'm like, he's there, like he's really there. And when he says that he was called because he was gay, that part will always get to me. Because we sometimes like, we felt shame at some point of it. And now it's like, oh no, I know that God is here because of this. So once you get to watch it and watch it and watch it and watch it again, you go like, oh yes, I'm gay. That's cool. And it's part of being, let me see, how can I say it without being humble in your heart, knowing that this is not the only part of you, but it is at the moment, it is an essential part of you that will make the change in other people, that will see your testimony, not because you're saying like, oh, I'm a gay Christian. What's up? No, it's the fruit that you have in yourself and how you talk to others about what Jesus did in your life through this journey. So I guess it's that has left me on that part with this documentary and working with it.
That last scene with David is my favorite scene in the movie, where he's like, I know I was called because I was gay, and that whole wrap up there. And then again, we talked about the drone shot pulling out. Even though it's the end of the movie and the journey's over, it doesn't end, I guess. It still begins. And here we are expanding the journey to Spanish speaking countries. I will say, Odette, we did apply for the Puerto Rican Film Festival per your suggestion on Film Freeway. We did not get in. We did get a notification back saying that they declined the film. So we're going to have to just do it ourselves. And I suggest and propose we find a church and we do a big screening, and hopefully I can come out. If not, we can do a Q&A afterward or something like that. So let's do something with this celebration, and we can get it, pack as many people as possible into, if you can find us a church that'll host the screening, that would be amazing. And then we can introduce the Spanish subtitles and do our premiere. I would like to be there. So let's work on that. We did apply for a grant to help me get to be able to go and work with the community in person, but also to continue to hire people, for example, to help me do all the editing for the podcast that's coming up. And we have a producer here in the United Kingdom, Josie Perez, where we're looking to do some in-studio work and get some people and some movement makers here in the United Kingdom as we're working across the pond and expanding into Europe. And then now we'd like to get to South America. We want to get to Africa, all these places. And so, but let's make Puerto Rico happen. And so I'm putting that out there.
I'm telling you, Rocky.
Right?
I'll do my part.
Okay.
I do my part. I'm trying to build relationships with organizations here that work for the LGBTQ plus community. It's a little bit hard. I found a lot of resistance in this, but I always think that relationships are everything. So I am starting it with that part and trying to build that and to gain trust and all that. So, but I am hopeful that that will be a reality really soon. So,
Let's do it. We'll do a
yeah.
follow-up on that, and hopefully in
Yes.
person. That would be
Yes, yes.
exciting. So,
Awesome. Awesome.
well, I'm going to say thank you again, both of you, for all of your work and then your time today sharing this episode. And thank you to the audience for tuning in to another episode of the 1946 podcast. You can find us on all social media platforms and, of course, on our website, 1946themovie.com. We'll see you next time. Thank you to our sponsors, makingthingsright.org, for your generous donation and helping us produce this podcast. And to Uncut Studios in downtown Los Angeles. Step into a studio unlike any other. To learn more, follow them at Uncut Studios DTLA on Instagram.